you would prefer, okay, and why, right? So, again, it looks like, for English, right, just participants, okay, and the way it did, but, just more participants, right? And it looks like people prefer, people have this preference, okay? Of course, they all know that you prefer to go as well, right? There's a preference for carbon, right? And from this, as you see in the next slide, okay? What does the enclosure predict? Think about this, right? So the enclosure says, you get a phrase, like this, the accent, okay? And you tell me basically to make refer to attach it to the closest one. People took this preference, okay? They took it as evidence for the enclosure. In a wrong result, okay? First of all, the enclosure is not a preference, okay? It's a principle, right? So there has to be something very special to happen, so you don't think that your parent and children go together, right? This is just a preference. Okay? People were actually happy with this referring to daughter. And actually, it's kind of obvious, And that's why I have to ask people like, right away, don't think too much, because once you think a little bit, you realize that it's very important. Okay? And the other one is that this is just we call a modifier, okay? It could be different, from having a verb that's competent, maybe the closer refers to this kind of thing, remember? The very basic syntactic phrase where there's a head and there's a competence. Verb is more about just head and competence. What this guy needs, right? Remember this idea of being needy, okay? Taking a complement and you project, right? And you projects, you do taxes, remember? Okay? Maybe that's why you got this enclosure principle, right? This seems to be different. It's about just choosing a phrase, in terms of if you have preference for the closest one or the one that's far away, right? So very different. But also the thing that happened with this, that people were kind of happy thinking of this as, good, big closure, of course, right? And then what happens? A group of researchers did the same thing in Spanish, right? So we got something like 8, okay? Anybody speaking Spanish or know any Spanish at all? Well, as you can see, maybe you can see, in some of the words are very similar, right? It's basically word by word, except that in Spanish you have this like 2 in English, okay? You have to only here because when you have a complement like that in Spanish, it's a person, you have to add 2. So you don't say, I saw the man, I saw to the man, basically. Okay? So you say, I saw the table. Anyway, it doesn't different. You have to add this for grammatical reasons in Spanish. The rest of it, again, is word by word, same thing. Except that also, this then is of the together. If the then becomes there. Okay? It's a contraction. The J becomes exactly. Alright? So, what happens here is that you interview participants, okay? You do this, and what you get, most speakers of Spanish prefer to attach the accent to dollar. So you get an MP2 preference in English, okay? But you get MP1 preference in Spanish. Then, right? There is something that we cannot explain. So what we need is in Spanish different. People who realized this, they thought, okay, so why would English be different? Okay? The principles are clear. We have the attachment, the closure, right? It looks like this works, kind of different, right? It looks like somehow this structure of relative clause here follows different principles of whether some speech refer to here or to here. Again, these are just preferences, right? So what they do, they went to they looked at corpus. What is this? A corpus is we refer to a collection of texts, okay? And of course, this was in the 80s, like almost 50 years ago, 40 years ago, right? There was no Googling. You went just search for a word and you go to the results, right? You have to go to an actual specific collection of texts, okay? And look at these structures. And what they found is that when you actually look at all the examples that they could find of this structure, okay? They found that in English, this was more frequent. In Spanish, this was more frequent. And what they come up with, this idea, actually they call this idea of tuning, kind of cool term, okay? Which is, of course, the principles are the same, basically, right? But in some other examples, you would choose the preference, okay, that is kind of tuned to what you have heard, in your life, right? And if the speaker has heard many more of these than MP1 attachment. And Spanish speaker has heard many more of these than MP2. Of course, we don't know this, just infer that from corporate, from like universal texts. Okay? And they said that, of course, that the principles bring no attachment, like closure, right? And that seems to be sort of given. But in other examples, your parts will be tuned to the preferences that you have heard, in your linguistic experience. Okay? So frequency seems to matter. Right? And it made all sense. Not only that, they study French as well, and guess what? French, but with Spanish. Okay? And your preference, you go to French texts, MP1 preference, MP1 attachment is more common. Okay? So it looks like confirmation that frequency is right? Good idea, interesting. It actually opens the field for thinking that our experience with the language can shape part of our preferences in parsing. Very interesting idea, right? But not true. Maybe we can look at other languages. They tried this in Dutch and Afrikaans. Afrikaans, the language spoken in South Africa, is similar to Dutch and German, as a Germanic language. Obviously brought by the colonizers centuries ago, right? They did it with Dutch and Afrikaans. And guess what? The preference for MP1 by MP2 is more frequent. Okay, so you have to make a very weird theory that English speakers, French speakers, Spanish speakers, okay, just go by what they hear, and Dutch and African speakers don't. It's a stupid theory, right? Or it's this other way, that's the other way to explain this. But just the idea of frequency can explain to you the preference, because with languages like Dutch and Afrikaans, where there's a difference between the preference and what's more frequent. So these guys, these people, these languages, have this preference, and this preference doesn't come from frequency. See the point? So the idea that this is more general frequency, or it's just the second MP1, MP2, and MP1, or MP1, depending on the other frequency rate, that doesn't work. There's this doesn't give evidence for a general preference or attachment in this kind of structure. Right? So it's not giving this, with a negative note, that we don't know what it is. Let me give you an example where an idea will make you think about what's going on here. Okay? Before that, let me also show that the way they know about this, okay, about these preferences, right? One way you can do it is like I just did, very bad experiment, plus people, and raise their hand. Okay? Another thing you can do is use the surface reading method, right? For something like English or Chinese too, you can do the Chinese, right? You could do the daughter of the colonel, again, compare, anybody can have an accent, right? Now how about this? Daughter of the colonel who was pregnant, or daughter of the colonel who was in the army. Okay? Then compare those two. The one that's faster is your preference. See your point? In principle, the colonel is in the army and the daughter can be pregnant. Right? So what you do is, daughter of the colonel who was pregnant, daughter of the colonel was in the army, okay, and then something else. When you measure that first word with something else. And you got to get a difference. You got to see a difference. Okay? Problem with that is that you're comparing, different words, so it's an issue, right? What's even better if the language allows you to do it, like Spanish, for example? Don't use those meaning preferences because they could be deceiving, right? Use the grammar, right? In language like Spanish, many languages are like this. Spanish, I'll give this one example. So you have daughter or son, actually, right? For Spanish, what you have is the same root, but the ending is different. So this one, hija, is feminine, daughter, okay? And hijo is masculine, is son, right? And then you can, for example, something I use this word because it's the same in English, director, okay? Director in Spanish. And if it's like this, it has to be masculine because feminine would be the name, okay? So in that situation, we have MP1 is feminine, singular in this case. MP2 is masculine in this case, okay? And you say, who was tired? The word tired in Spanish, okay? There's no word tired. Is it tired masculine or tired feminine? There's no word for friend in Spanish. Okay? There's no word for friend. Is friend masculine or friend feminine? There's no word that means friend ambiguously male or female. That doesn't exist. Okay? So when you say I'm going out with a friend, you're saying you're going out with a female friend or male friend. There's no way to make it just ambiguous. Okay? So the word tired, masculine would be cansado, and the word feminine, tired, would be cansada. And that's a very obvious grammatical difference. Okay? I mean, you can't override this. Okay? If the Spanish speaker hears hija and then cansado, okay, that's very familiar. Can't be the same person. It can't be a mistake. Okay? There's no way you can make it work. Right? So obviously, this is going to tell you clearly that this is about this one, and this is about this one. Alright? What do you find in Spanish? If you continue the sentence, this whatever is here is faster than this. So you know that the preference is for it. Right? When you actually have to do, the process of making work conforms to your preference, then it's faster. Okay? If you are forced to make it masculine, yeah, then it's going to be slower. The preference is for it. Okay? You have to choose, again, the meaning alone would be like the best idea, but there are some things that could be very useful. So for Chinese, right? Imagine, Colonel de Noor, Colonel de Noor, Pyongyang, the Colonel de Noor. I mean, the Colonel de Pyongyang, yeah, he's a very beautiful woman, actually. No, he's a very beautiful boy, Pyongyang, okay? But usually you think of daughters, right? It's not ideal, right? But can be very helpful. Okay? Just if you use like something Pyongyang was obviously very biased towards them. Okay? Right. That said, so what's going on here? What do you get? This difference between English and Spanish and French. And we have stuff, right? And people try to look at this from the point of view of just pure processing and frequency, corpora, etc. This language, right? Languages have different properties. Let's explore these and see. We can try to find a sort of explanation. We have this sentence in English, right? And you have the phrase. I mixed the UDH. The daughter of. Right? That's same thing in English, right? Same thing in Spanish and in French. That's the same shape. Is this the only way you can say this in English? There's another way to express the same thing in English, right? Instead of the daughter of the colonel, you can use something that's more like the Chinese way, actually, which is right? Again, it's not the same Chinese, but it's the same, but it's more similar to Chinese structure. You see, the orders is Muslim, right? Colonel of the right? And now what happens here? Suppose I have a relative clause who had the accent after this. What happens? The colonel's daughter who had an accent. Who had the accent? The daughter. There's another option. Right? And this little structure, it has to be daughter. Right? Now, what would say that the instance I would say? Because in French and French, the only way to express this thought is like this. But in English, there's another way to express it, which is like this. Right? In which case, if you have a relative clause, like what the accent after that phrase, then it has to be daughter. It has to be daughter, the option, right? You can have the colonel's daughter, well, the accent, that being the colonel. That's a word. Is anyone going with this? Right? There's another way to say that in which this is unambiguously about this one. So it makes sense that if you choose this way, and the relative clause, it makes sense that there is a preference for this one. Because if there was a preference for this one, you would use it this way. Because that's not ambiguous. If you want to express the thought that the daughter, the the girl has a daughter, right? And the daughter has the accent. You do it this way. What would you choose an unambiguous? Sorry, what would you choose an ambiguous version? Do you have the ambiguous one? I mean, it's not impossible, but it should be a preference there. Okay? So it's possible why it's a possibility to explain why basically in English, okay, MP2 is preferred. Because with Spanish or French, okay, and the preference to have that clause, okay, referring to pronoun. It's not only this, you know. We think of this as MP1, MP2, and that's like a sequence, but we know now, we should know now, like the syntax is not like this. Yeah? Actually, the structure of this, I don't want to tell you, the structure is not like this, okay? That's the structure. So it's confusing to talk about MP1 versus MP2, but you know, MP1 versus MP2, it's nice to know. It's weird to say MP1 or MP2 as we're separate things, because in the syntax, this is part of this. Okay? So think about the enclosure. Attach the phrase to the phrase Caribbean parts. If you are here, this part of this degree of this phrase, but also this phrase. Okay? This is part of this. Actually, if you said the verb of the, then it should be incomplete as well. Okay? So the way it looks like this, maybe a preference for, I already could refer to the whole phrase. Alright? Okay, can you write that? Yeah, you can do that. If the language allows this other option, in which case you will have to be done. Okay, that's why in English you prefer this one. In only English. Vice versa French, okay? You prefer God. Right? And also English like the ultimate solution, right? But it makes you think that whenever you have this kind of issue with processing, you have to kind of look at the source, okay? And understand language processing is processing of the language, right? Which means you have to understand what the language is to make sense of how you process it. Okay? And at least people try to explain this, okay? They have to take this into account. They have to. Okay, maybe not the right solution, but you have to think about this. Okay? Comments or questions? Right, so that's the last slide, okay? I'm going down here, I'm scrolling down, see 25 to 25. We're done. That's it. I'm done with this. Great. Then, now we have 10 minutes, and we do 10 minutes is do some review for next week. Alright? As I promised you, right, as I did last time, okay? I wrote 25 statements from the, I think last year or maybe 2 years ago, the final exam, okay? We can take a look at this, okay? As usual, so I'm going to just put this on the screen. Take a look at some of these and I'll go down and see the others, right? Take a look at the first 15 or all these if you want, okay? And try to get a sense, of where you are, Like, how many you just very easy to do now? How many you're totally, confused about? And how many you think that you spend more for next week, you're fine. Okay? So take a look, and then we'll go through it. By the way, this is in your okay, so just take a look. shouldn't have. Just in case we do something. Sorry. Okay, and go down to have a sense of all them. Again, same thing, 25 statements, true or false. Let's start with this one, just real quick, okay? For example, you should know this already. 25, rest level is based on surface frequency, true or false? Look here, what's rest level? Remember number, ask, world, something, whatever. More frequent words are more active or hex, remember? Okay? So more frequent word is easy to recognize. Faster to recognize. Yeah? No discussion, in morphology, and whether that's based on the surface frequency or root frequency. Remember this? Remember the lesson we learned from dog and dog pile? So I have basic dog and dog pile, right? So they're different words. Dog pile has nothing to do with dog, doesn't mean that. Yeah? But dog pile, of course, has the two roots, dog and pile. Dog pile should have very low risk level because it's very frequent compared to dog, definitely, right? So we have to compare the frequency, the risk level of these two. Okay, dog pile is surprisingly high. Surprisingly high. Okay. So surface frequency of dog pile, okay, should we predict that very low risk level. It's not. It's very high. Okay, dog pile is very quick to recognize, right? And that's the thing, because being a dog pile is not frequent, its roots, dog and pile, are indeed frequent. And very most importantly, the first root dog is very, very frequent. Okay? And that will explain why dog pile has surprisingly high risk level. Okay? Risk level is based on surface frequency, false. It's based on root frequency. And that's the slide. So you just put it up, and see it. Okay? They do add this. Dog pile is probably less frequent than definitely less frequent than rebound. The rebound is a good okay, dog pile is less frequent than strategy, for sure. Strategy is a more common word than dog pile. I think we can agree with this, right? Okay? Dog pile has a higher risk level than strategy. How's it possible? More or less the same thing. It was more frequent. It should be faster to recognize than dog pile. It's not. Okay? But when you're comparing, it's not strategy with dog pile. It's strategy, which is just one more thing, okay, with dog. See the point? Okay? 25 false. There's a sentence in the slide saying something like, surface frequency makes better predictions than, root frequency makes better predictions than surface frequency. Okay? Yeah, it's mentioned in the slides. Right. Let's do this, okay? Let's just come up in this game, okay? 1, true or false? Any truths? Who says true? Raise your hand. Anybody? Come on. No? False? Raise your hand. You're not being, tested with this, right? It's just to make this work, okay? Choose another phrase to use taxes. True or false? True, anybody? No? False, anybody? Okay, it's true. 1 of the 3. Oops, okay. Remember, handle conference, okay? It's not about the important element. It's not about the meaningful element, okay? Right? Use text only a phrase by itself, meaning it's fine by itself. It doesn't need anything. 2, on the other hand, it needs another phrase. The need element the mediator projects also over this. Okay, to is the head of the phrase, produce taxes. Okay? And in this case, actually, if you look at the slides, we actually treat basically see this. Even if you don't understand it, which is a different reason, different issue, right? You see that this is the head of the field, right? Okay? Questions, comments? The same thing with, imagine the man, right? If I ask you to think about the man, what's the head? They were men. Obviously, you think that, well, obviously, man, right, is the meaningful one. Okay? Man sounds like itself. Man, I always like this. The means man. Right? That's actually why we think that the determiner, right, is the head of the phrase. Okay? This is not about the meaningful element. Okay? It's about your formal purpose. Right? Two, in John we see those people, John will be reactivated after those. True or false? Remember reactivation, who's also a fixed sample reactivation? You have some element in the phrase being reactivated at some other point in the sentence. Remember this? It's actually here somewhere. Remember this stuff? Okay? The boys will be reactivated at the end of the phrase, for example. Okay? The boys will be reactivated at them because then it makes you refers to the boys. Okay? So it's reactivated. Yes? So two, true or false? True? Anybody? False? Anybody? And some false, okay, great, yes, false. Nothing here actually will make you reactivate John, okay? Give me an example of simple one where John will reactivate. For example, John will be seen by Mary. Right? That's a passive, okay? So the reactivation of John after seeing. Right? As we get here. Remember this? Remember why this is faster than this, okay? Because right drifter is reactivated in the complement class. Okay? It's useful to go to class and pay attention. Right. 3. TPs never has specifiers. True or false? True, anybody? False, anybody? That's false. Give me an example of a TP with specifier. He's so Mary. Or even better, so it is easier. He will see Mary. Right? He will then refers to see Mary, right? Specifier. Again, if you don't know what this is, you have to go back and understand the term specifier. Right? In this kind of phrase where you have a head and its complement, which is BP, right? That's a head, that's a complement, that's a phrase level, yes? Specifier and complement. Specifier and complement. Yeah? That's what we call the exponent or intermediate level, right? Right? I think just been shy. You know what I'm sure. 4. True or false? True, anybody? False, anybody? Serial structure provides evidence for serial model. You know what serial structure is, right? Right? All set looks on line. Serial select access. I remember this, right? False. Serial structure has nothing to do with where the word is accessed in a serial manner or in a parallel way. Okay? Right? I saw some like of these faces, that's good news. Okay. 5. True or false? Any truth? Yeah? Any false? No? Okay, it's true. Right? It's on the issue, it will be a verb phrase. Okay? Right, again, we talk about this, but it doesn't matter. Okay, that's the phrase that's complement to understand. Okay? Understand is the head. See, it projects, right? It's the head of the whole phrase. Okay? Then just clarify, right? When we call this VP, it's not just random. Okay? It means this thing is a phrase. Okay? And its head is this thing. That's what's called verb phrase. Okay? It's not just like an invention here. Okay? is the P comes from phrase, meaning this is a phrase, right? And the V comes from the fact that this is the head. Right? 6. Put the box on the table in the kitchen is a globally ambiguous sentence. True or false? Any true? Any false? I assume true. Great. True. Why is it globally ambiguous? You start a sentence, okay? You finish it, it's still ambiguous. Okay? At this point, remember, put the box at this on the region, right? This becomes ambiguous, right? This could be where you put it or where the box is. Okay? This could be where you find the box, or it could be the phrase telling you where you put the box. Okay? And that ambiguity takes is rejected again. It's called ambiguous. Alright? 7. English doesn't have prefixes. True or false? Any true? No? False? Great, some false. Great. Give me an example of a prefix in English. Give me an example of a word in English that has a prefix. Undo. Right? Recharge. Detox. Yeah. There's a trick here, which is that if you're thinking about things that are about grammar, or singular, plural, something like that, ing, those are all suffixes in English. They're all after the root. Okay? But they're derivational prefixes. Re, no, it's important. Okay? Undo, redo, recharge, detox. Okay? Right? There are many more suffixes in English than prefixes, but there are some prefixes. Okay? If you are wondering about this, like basically maybe like re and are the most obvious ones. Okay? This also, engage, disengage, okay? Or mistrust, okay. 8. It is possible for part of a word to prime another word. True or false? Any truths? Let's see, truths, any false? No false? Great, it's true. Example? Trombone. What is trombone? What was trombone relevant for our lecture? Trombone is just trombone, right? It's not kind of bone. It's not fish bone. Yeah? But it looks like, as I told you, trombone like somehow primes something like flesh. Remember this? Okay? Part of this word primes this one. Alright? And when we're trying to talk about this, we explain this as some kind of, like fancy or like a magic property of priming, right? But actually what happens is that trombone has a series of sounds, trombone, right? And those sounds here, okay, correspond to the word, their head, bone. And bone primes flesh. There's not some magic, that part of the word can prime, this happens, it's true, okay? But it happens because making those sounds can also activate the word bone. Even though there's no bone. Alright? 9. English doesn't have letter seams. True or false? True? No? False? Okay, a couple of falses? Great. Of course, cat is a letter seam, right? These are what English are other languages. This is the fact that, how we analyze this problem. The next scene, cat, remember we have the word forms cat, singular, cats, plural, and probably also cats possessive, right? The cat's home. Remember this, right? That's the next scene, okay? That's like the word, it's on the abstract, right? And these are the word forms of the next scene. Remember this, okay? Present past sentences are grammatical. True? Anybody? False? Anybody? False. They're grammatical. They're very hard to process. They're confusing. They're artificial. They're made by linguists to show a particular point. Okay. But present past sentences of the kind, the complex houses, right, and person and families, right? It's a nightmare of a sentence. Confusing. It's made. It was composed by English for a reason to show a point, right? But this is completely grammatical. It's just tricky. Okay? It's designed to be tricky. right? But the grammar, perfect. The complex, houses, marriages and soldiers, and the families. Nothing wrong with it. And this way, a computer can knew the rules of English without any problem. Okay? We have none of this. So the way we do process. A machine wouldn't. Okay? And 11. Chinese is based mostly on agglutinative morphology. Do you know this? True or false? True, anybody? False, anybody? I have some falses. In the three terms, okay, isolating, agglutinative, intersectional, right? Chinese is mostly isolated. Okay? Each morpheme is free. Know this. Alright? In the agglutinative example, the example of Turkish, okay? Let me actually finish with doing this example, okay? As I told you, like, this type of morphology is not about the actual language, it's about the type of morphology that you show in whatever language, right? So, better example, even better. What's the good want? Okay? I will want something, right? Make this past tense in English, right? I wanted something. Right? So that's the future marker, that's the past tense marker, right? All these, yeah? Okay. So for the future tense in English, okay, English is more like Chinese, it's isolated. Okay? Yeah, will means future is particular word, one more thing, it's free. Right? You see that it thing is not free, is it? You don't say I want something, it has to be attached to a word. That's a free morpheme. That's a bound morpheme. Right? Chinese is mostly like this. Most morpheme Chinese are free. Okay? All that are free? No. Like le is not free, man is not free, right? Woman, that man is not free. It has to be attached to war or to anything else. Right? There's something that can be like pull, for example, can be just the verb pull, or then you say to pull. That pull is more down as well the verb. Okay? And actually, as far as I know, in Taiwan, the two pulls don't make a difference, right? In notice in the mainland, the second pull is pronounced differently. The two pull, not two pull. That pull in the mainland is pronounced with the middle tone, not with fourth tone. It's different pronunciation. Okay? And yeah, actually, the bound morphemes in Chinese tend to be middle tone, not first, second, third, fourth. Right? 12. Noun phrases are always marked with tense. True or false? Any true? False? Come on, give some false. Okay, great. Right. Okay, this would be, if somebody said true here, he doesn't know what they're talking about. Right? A noun phrase about something, a thing, right? Usually, the structure, the table, etc. Right? Tense about an event, kissing or whatever it is, right? So the tense is about the sentence, the past or the future, right? Not the noun phrase. Okay? They're two different things. 13. Can we move to C in English? True or false? True, anybody? False, anybody? Neither, huh? Okay? Can anybody give an example where can is in C in English? Remember C and T in the structure? He will, their phrase, whatever it is. You can have a C head on this. And that C head could be like if or that, right? Like I don't know if he would do it, or I know that he will do it. Yeah? So you have this own word in C, but what else we can see? Remember? You find mostly in question, it's mostly the only question. Right? If this is a will, this can, he can do it, and you ask, yes, the question we get, can he do it, right? Can he do it? Can be C. Right? 13, can move to C in English, false. Example, can you do it? Just can and see. Right? And again, if you're kind of philosophy, what you can do now is use these, right, as sort of your guide, your study guide for your study for this, right? And I kind of know what the kind of you have to be looking at. Right? 14. Recency effects are exclusive to sentence processing. True or false? You remember this? Any true? No? False? I guess you remember. Okay? Recency effects is about human memory in general. We mentioned this. Knowing about sentence processing. Okay? We use that to understand what happened here. Remember? If you compare A and B, okay, the word voice is recognized faster in A and B, which is closer to the end. Right? That's not only about words and sentences, it's about everything. If I ask you what you ate yesterday, that's easy to remember than what you ate 10 days ago. In general, what can you do? Right? Because human memory is about business. Okay? And other things, but no, definitely there's about business. Okay? So these examples that use recency, let's take advantage of something that happens in human memory in general. Right? Computers are like this. Our memories are like this. Okay? 15. Orthographic similarity can lead to programming effects. True or false? True, anybody? I see a couple of hands. False, anybody? What was an example of rhyming between two, similarly written words? You know these? For example, there are more, a few more in this English, right? But this, not similar, right? Okay, this one, the H and the R, but they have like very similar combination of words, right? That's true, that's tough. So you know the sound, yeah? But these two, they very much have. Similarly, okay, in Chinese, for example, two characters look very similar, alright? But have different meanings, different pronunciations, they will prime each other. Okay? So your knowledge of how something is written in the language, basically, besides sound, besides meaning, would be your point. Right? 16. This is kind of like similar to this one, I guess, to that. Most morphemes are found in Chinese. True or false? True, anybody? False? False. Most of them are free. Okay? Bound morpheme in Chinese, yeah. You have le, man, wo, baby, ne, ma, and 5 more, 6 more. That's it. Okay? All the other 4,000 of them basically are free. Right? 17. Click studies are recent development in sentence processing. True or false? True, anybody? False, anybody? There's a line you can just look at here. You can find it. I mentioned this, okay? These were one of the first studies in psycholinguistics, okay? And they come from late 50s, early 60s, right? Basically, people had to wait until we had useful computers to do this, okay? In this example, what people did first, it's like a very simple sort of experiment, right? Then they go to something, things that are like more complex, right? 18. In isolated languages, morphemes tend to be free. True or false? True, anybody? Yeah, couple of hands, cool. False, anybody? That's true. Okay? So, isolated morphology is something like this. Each of the morphemes is free. Okay? In a perfectly isolated language, right? All the morphemes will be like will, or like want, like I. If a language were perfectly, everything was isolating, everything, there would never be and, or love, or none. Stable? By the way, it's very hard to find such something. Right? Next one. Agglutinative languages do not have morphemes. True or false? True. False. False. All languages have morphemes. Okay? meaning is the smallest linguistic sign that has meaning, right? Even like, even like this S in cats, that's a morpheme. But that S means plural. Right? It's not, of course, not a word, right? It's not even a free morpheme, it's a vowel morpheme, it's very small, only, right? But that's a morpheme. It means plural, right? In cats, this is a morpheme, okay? In bus, that also ends in an S, that's not a morpheme, right? Bus is not a plural of bug. Okay? Some English sentences display T to C movement. True or false? True and great. So true is great. False? Yeah, true. What's the example? We just pick one. Okay? Will he do it or can he do it? That's T to C movement. What languages can you speak? Remember this one? Okay? Also T to C movement. Right? Generally, yes, no questions in English. And in most language questions, they do this, not all of them. Okay? 21. Only verbs undergo projection in the syntax. True or false? True. Anybody? No? False. I see a couple of falses. Yeah, that's false. Right? Basically, all heads. If you have a head, that's because undergoes projection. It's not all verbs. Okay? In this one here, for example, if he will do it, remember this, there's a C head and the C head projects. So if this cannot project, it's a rare phrase. Remember this, right? If it is by myself, he will do it. Happy. This if means the TP. Okay? So it's me. Alright? Almost there. 22. The serial model of disk access has linear support. True or false? False. It has a lot of empirical support. Remember this, okay? Most of the studies, like the Money River, that kind of thing, it's been done many years, okay, many different words with different languages. It always works, basically. Remember, you get priming regardless of context. That's the point of that, okay? 23. The parser prefers early closure over late closure. True or false? False. Okay? The first one is for late closure. 24. A pronoun can recreate a word that has appeared in the sentence. True or false? Remember this? Boys here has same reaction time as in A. Okay? It shows like as far as in B. It looks like boys. It looks like, sounds like, or feels like is at the end of the sentence. Because the result for T for A and C are the same. And that gives the pronoun is activated voice. Okay? Just that's it, okay? Then when you read, when people have to read in this case, you read them, okay? They're like, oh, what is them about? It's about the voice, and that's why the voice is activated. Okay? So yeah, a pronoun can be with a word. Great. See you next week. Same time, same place. Okay? So yeah, I mean, my advice that when you actually study and review all the stuff of the exam, okay? Look at these, okay? Just like give you a little guide for study for this.